When my Harvard-trained political science teacher asked me, why do we have the rule of law? I was stumped. I don't know. I thought, why do we have the rule of law? When he responded, because people are constantly in conflict with one another, I thought, really? I thought it was just me.
You're listening to the Science and Spirit of Happy podcast, where we discuss the rational, strategic, and psychological methods, but also the deeper reasons and spiritual philosophy behind being happy down to the soul. Happiness isn't just hedonism. It's not even solely personal. Getting happy dramatically increases your effectiveness in every area, from business and finance to relationships. When we align with our own personal version of ideal, we end up not just happier, but healthier, more whole, more successful and richer, but even loving and loved. It's my opinion that getting happy for yourself is the absolute best way to serve the people in your life. I'm your host, Laura Lee Bowers, master healer and academic researcher, and this is another episode diving into the science and spirit of happy, a logical path to soul.
G'day, y'all. Welcome back. Oh, we are talking about something so juicy today. You know, I had notes for this episode, and I feel like I'm just going to wing it because I made the notes quite a few months ago, and I want to tell you that, you know, I'm talking about fighting, and I'm coming from a place where I think I have a lot of experience. I grew up in a home where we had lots of totally unproductive fighting, and I have been married to a man, been in a familial relationship with him for over 6 years, where I think our average was like a fight a week. And like, I don't mean a disagreement, I mean a fight, like a fight that ended in tears fight. And now we haven't fought in months. We've had disagreements and we haven't fought in months. So I really want to dive into fighting with you. And I guess first we should talk about what productive and unproductive fighting is. So basically, you know, unproductive fighting is it doesn't go anywhere. Unproductive fighting is when essentially, you know, you're not being seen, heard, acknowledged, or empathized with. So that stuff can't go anywhere. So when we're talking about productive fighting, we're talking about fighting that progresses, whether in whatever way, right? The relationship progresses, or you progress together down the path of life. You know, one of you progresses or the other progresses, etc. So I guess what we really need to do is to lay a foundation, because I just want to say, like, forthright, that fighting is really natural. When I was in Poly 101, my Harvard-trained professor just asked the whole class why they thought we had the rule of law, and nobody could answer. We're all stumped, right? It's like asking a fish why we have water. I don't know. Why do we have the rule of law? And he responded, it's because people are constantly in conflict with one another. And I thought, are you serious? Like, I thought that was just me. Like, nope. It's a totally natural state to be in conflict with other people. It's why we have the rule of law. So when we're talking about relationships, the rule of law, I think, comes down to the immutable truths, right? The immutable kind of human rights of relationship. So the human right to peace of mind in relationship ends up being seen. When the human right of being loved in relationship, that results as being hurt, right? The human right the immutable truth of dignity, of integrity, that in relationship it translates as being respected. And then the immutable human truth of living in abundance, having vitality and health and beauty and well-being in relationship that results in being acknowledged, right? And being safe. So when we're talking about fighting, we're talking about conflict, we need to lay some laws down. So the laws are that you are seen, heard, acknowledged, empathized with, and that you're safe. So people coming together will naturally have different wants, needs, perspectives, etc. I thought for my entire conscious life, like post me having a spiritual awakening and doing all this work on myself, I thought that it was impossible for a relationship to not, like a relationship problem to not have two parts of it. I thought that, that whole it takes two to tango, that if someone ever said the words, it's all their fault, then that would necessarily mean that they're probably mostly at fault because they're like in denial. Because I didn't think it was possible that it could be like all someone else's fault. However, I think it was like 4 or 5 years into my relationship with my husband when I really came to terms with the fact that our problems were all his fault. And I'm going to tell you why. There are only 2 scenarios where problems can be all someone else's fault. And that is when they're lacking those fundamental things of seeing you, of hearing you, of being able to acknowledge what they've seen and heard, of empathizing with you, and creating safety for you. If someone is not able to do those things, then it doesn't really matter how imperfect your reactions are, how better you could be at supporting them through whatever, crappy way that they're being. It doesn't matter how much more in line with the person that you want to be that you could get. None of that matters. It doesn't matter that you're not perfect too. The fundamental stuff that's missing means that you can't go anywhere until that person does the work to be able to come and give you basic respect, to give you basic acknowledgement, to give you your basic human dignity. The other time that someone is entirely at fault is when they're in a position of total authority, like a parent, right? So parent-child relationship breaks down, that's on the parent. Like, hands down. I'm sorry, I know that some people don't want to hear that. And that's a pretty good indication that those people didn't hear a lot of things. So, it is what it is. And when someone can't empathize, when someone can't see you, hear you, acknowledge you, respect you, create safety for you because they're lacking empathy, this could be getting into a space where we're talking about abnormal psychology. And if they really can't do it, then it is what it is. Like, you can't have a relationship with that person, in my opinion. I mean, you can continue to have a relationship with that person, but the cookie's not gonna crumble. My husband was able to empathize, but it was like a hairline fracture, like in the cookie. So I had to take a hammer and chisel to it to crack the shell, right? To get to the space underneath where he could empathize, where he could see, where he could hear me, he could acknowledge me, he could respect me, and I was safe. And that is what made our fighting productive. And the cookie cracker, the hammer and the chisel, that was the fighting for us. So fighting can be super super productive if it's going somewhere. I have been lately geeking out on the brain. I've read quite a bit about neuroscience, etc., but like I hadn't really been interested in what parts of the brain did what. I just, that kind of information when like in one ear out the other, it just didn't really stick with me until recently. I started getting really into it. I think because my toddler's brain is developing, so studying like all the things that are happening with him and how his brain is developing. And basically our brain is not just split into two hemispheres, but it's also split into like kind of like a lower brain and then an upper brain. So the upper brain is much newer, right? And everything that we think of when we think of like what makes human beings different from animals is kind of like upper brain stuff. Lower brain, our lower brain is almost identical to like a shark. It has the same components. Okay, so this is like, I think in Eastern spiritualism, this is what they call like the monkey mind, the lizard brain, or whatever, right? Which is it's true. We share the same components of that brain with lizards, you know, or monkeys. So it's very animalistic. It's very raw and instinctual, etc. And basically, when we're talking about having relationships where there's like a give and take and we're both seen, we're both heard, we're both acknowledged, we're both empathized with, you know, we're both like, we're creating safety for one another, whatever. This is upper brain stuff, right? So when we have trauma, essentially, you know, when we have trauma, when we're coming from relationships where that wasn't created for us, or if we're all of a sudden in survival mode where we're not being seen, we're not being heard, we're not being empathized with, we're not being acknowledged, and we're not safe, lizard mind can take over. So you have this little part of your brain called the amygdala, and it can actually block access to the upstairs brain, which is what happens when toddlers are having tantrums. Their whole upstairs brain is in construction. So the downstairs brain is like a whole other animal. It's a whole other beast, right? It's the monkey mind. It's an animal. And when we're talking about having this upstairs relationship, like you can't have an upstairs relationship in a downstairs situation. So there's like an upstairs you. There's a you that can sit and be like, I see your perspective and I'm going to, consider your perspective and see if we can come to an agreement with one another. And then there's a downstairs you. There's an F you. I'm gonna kick you if you come near me. I will scream at the top of my lungs if you say another word. They're almost two different people because they're made to deal with two completely different situations. So your downstairs mind, guess what emotions it is associated with, like it has and responds to? Fear and anger, right? These are animalistic traits. So when someone's feeling angry, and this was actually used against my husband in his upbringing, that like, oh, you're feeling angry, you're in your lower mind. That means, you're the one who is bad now, like, because you're not thinking clearly. It was used as a way to like shame. And I think that it still is, when somebody loses their cool. In the books I'm reading about the toddler mind, they say that when the toddler goes into that downstairs brain, it almost is like they've lost their mind. Like you could say that, and it kind of like is literally true because the access to the upper brain gets blocked. And when we talk about brain, when we talk about the mind as it pertains to humans, we're talking about that upper brain, right? We're not talking about the downstairs brain that is like, me want food. Like it really is like losing your head. So yeah, no, that's not ideal, right? We don't want relationships like that. We want the relationships where we're considered, where we can consider somebody else's perspective, where everything's copacetic, where everything is on the up and up and the upstairs. But if you're getting triggered into anger, being triggered into fear, these are survival instincts. These are not base emotions that we need to, wipe away because they're unevolved. Like, these are actually probably more necessary than all of the other emotions that we like to entertain. This way of the amygdala cutting off access to the upper mind, this is a survival thing. This is fully functioning. This is high functioning. This is being able to, swat away a burning log that comes flying at your head without thinking about it. Feeling anger is a survival instinct. It is raw, it is real, and it would not be happening if there wasn't a flying, burning, freaking log being hurled at your head. Okay, so back to this legal analogy. So there's a saying in law and politics that your right to swing your arm ends at my face. Meaning that when you enter what we call a social contract, you actually give up some of your rights. So I give up my right to swing my arm into your face, and you do the same. It's an agreement. It's a contract. So what happens when someone breaks the law? They forfeit the rights that they gained through the legal system. So your rights, or anybody's rights, they end when infringing on another person's rights. So there's a big debate going on right now about freedom of speech, and a lot of people are talking about freedom of speech. But your freedom, one person's freedom to express themselves, ends at another person's right to peace, to respect, to safety, right? That seen, heard, acknowledged, that right to exist molested, without arms swinging in their face, without harmful things coming at them. So again, when you break those laws, you forfeit those rights. So you break the laws, then, the police have the right to take you into custody, to actually put you in a cage, to take away all of your rights, depending on where you are. These can be, your right to vote, etc., like your right to be a citizen of the country whose social contract you broke. It could cost them money. It could cost them all kinds of things. It could cost them their reputations, etc. If someone attacks someone else, then their retaliation is considered self-defense, right? So this is totally legal, even admirable, necessary, and natural. So something as, vile as physical violence all of a sudden has a place and is considered right. Not just right, but actually admirable against those who would do others wrong. So it's a really stupid saying when we're dealing with children that we say it doesn't matter who started it. Kids will be like, but they started it, like this person did this to me and then I did that back to them. And parents often will say to their kids, it doesn't matter who started it. Well, it does matter. It does matter in a legal sense, and it does matter in a justice, in a sense of justice. So when someone comes at you from a place that is harmful, somebody comes at you from the downstairs brain, you may or may not be able to deal with that situation from upstairs. And in many cases, it could actually not even be righteous for you to stay upstairs. My husband, he was groomed his whole life to hide his emotions. Not a novel story for men, right? In our society. But he was actually groomed to be inauthentic, right? So his upstairs brain was actually programmed to be completely inauthentic, to protect himself through, manipulating conversations. So upstairs with him did absolutely nothing because he was so cut off from, normal, natural human reactions. And I tried for years. And years. Actually, no, not years. I tried for like 2 years. And in the third year, it started becoming too much. I started to lose my head. I started to go downstairs. And I felt so bad about it because I had spent so much time I come from this downstairs brain background, and I wanted to live this life where I was, evolve, be able to communicate with my family members in a way that was like mutually beneficial and productive and just more beneficial. So I felt so bad about this, like I'm bad, like this is my trauma. No one wants to live there, right? But this ended up being the only way that I could actually crack through to the real person behind all of this programming. And it was a big part of my development and my personal growth to actually get okay with this. And it wasn't even that I had to get okay with it. It's like I had to make the realization that actually I was okay with it, that I was actually regulated most of the time when I was doing this, that I was in control. As soon as he would come online, as soon as he could be a real human being who could see, hear, and acknowledge me, my downstairs brain would completely shut off. I would be upstairs immediately. This is kind of illustrating when my downstairs brain would completely shut down and I would be immediately upstairs as soon as he was back online, as soon as his, humanness was back online. This was like a sense in me. It wasn't even that he would say something and then all of a sudden I would feel better. No, it's like I knew immediately he didn't have to say anything. I all of a sudden just felt better and I looked at him like, you're back, right? And he, a tear would fall down his eye like he was back. Like it's like an energy shift that I would pick up on. And this brings me to another thing that we need to consider. If you're thinking that you're experiencing dysregulation, right? Or being triggered, we assume that this means that something is wrong, but it's not dysregulated to get pumped full of adrenaline to fight a charging bear, right? It's not dysregulated to fight back against somebody who's attacking you and even beat the living crap out of them. That's not dysregulated. That's totally like A-okay. Your reactions are 100% on the ball, right? So sometimes when we're getting triggered, like we're actually dealing with someone who is maybe highly abusive. Maybe they aren't being highly abusive in that situation, but maybe you're sensitive. Maybe you have trauma, so you're sensitive to, sensing abusive situations, people being intrusive, going past your boundaries, enjoying, making you upset. And maybe that sets you off, right? Alarm bells go off in your head and you freak out at them. That doesn't necessarily mean that reaction was wrong. Maybe it doesn't necessarily fit the precise situation that was happening, but it might precisely fit who that person is and how they behave. And it could set off the alarm for other people to recognize that this person is a problem. So all of the times that I was, fighting in a way that I thought was totally unacceptable, I had to come to a place to accept that I was acting from a place of integrity. I had to stop gaslighting myself and realize that I was acting in a way that aligned with how I wanted to act. Although it's not desirable to be in that situation. I didn't want to be in that situation. I didn't want to be doing those things. In this situation, it was necessary. Everyone would prefer not to have to fight the bear. But you know what? What if that bear was attacking your husband, the love of your life, or your child? Okay, you don't have a choice. I fought the bear in my husband and I won. I saved his bloody life, hammering away at the charging bear in him. I saved his life. Those aren't my words. Those are his words. P.S. I am doing a whole season on parenting because dealing with kids is an entirely different story. So if you're talking about conflict with children, please do not take any of this advice whatsoever. Listen to my parenting season. At least take the advice on doing the self-reflection, but everything else, maybe take it with a grain of salt until you hear the parenting season. So a really good indication that this isn't going to go anywhere, that the fighting isn't going to go anywhere, is when the fighting is happening because you've shared that, they've made you feel some kind of way, or they acted in a way that was you found inappropriate, etc. When you're offering up your perspective on something that's happened between you, that's hurtful, that they're responsible for, and they see that as an attack. Like, if that doesn't turn around, like, we can all have poor reactions to things. We can all, somebody be like, hey, you did this thing to me, and you're like, hey, screw you for bringing that up. I don't like to feel that way. Even my toddler, someone when he hits us on accident and hurts us, and I'll be like, you poked my eye with your book, and he's like, I hate feeling this way. You can just see, he's just it's just that's a natural reaction. But if people don't come around, if they're genuinely like, you said this thing to me, how could you? And the thing that you said was your behavior's super inappropriate. You've made me feel really bad, and I'm not okay with it. Yeah, chances are that person is an abuser. They're seeing vulnerability as an attack. They're seeing their own vulnerability as you attacking them. And that fight is probably not going to go anywhere. What about when your behavior is problematic too? Because we're fed a lot of stuff about what a healthy relationship is, and I'm sitting here and I'm saying the same thing to you. I'm saying, my relationship's so healthy. It's been months and months since we had a fight, even though we've had disagreements and we spend every day together, all day together. And this is what a healthy relationship would look like. Well, this is what a healthy relationship looks like when, as I said, each person's being seen, each person's being heard, each person's being acknowledged, each person's being respected, each person is safe with the other person. So are you wrong for fighting back, fighting dirty? Are you wrong for fighting dirty in specific scenarios? Well, let's look. Yelling, cursing, name calling, even violence, it is inherently human. Look at the media. Look at what we look at. Okay? This stuff is human. It's human. I mean, I don't want to be in those kinds of relationships any more than anybody else does, but those things are there for a reason. I'm into gentle parenting, and my toddler sometimes we have this big heavy mirror that hangs on the wall, and sometimes when he's getting really kind of antsy and he wants to go out and he's teething, and he's really, really active, we have to constantly just be giving him activities and stuff, because he's just one of those kids who he just needs the mental stimulation. And if he's getting into kind of a little bit of a frenzy, we have this mirror, he'll grab the mirror and slam it against the wall, and it just freaks me out so badly because it's really big, it's really heavy. So he did that one time when I was all the way across the room, and I just screamed at him, right? I was like, right? And I felt so bad, but I didn't feel bad. I felt bad because I'm into gentle parenting, and I follow these gentle parenting influencers that I think are really, really cool, that also have firm boundaries. And yelling is never allowed, apparently, and so that kind of super, overarching mind was saying oh, well, you shouldn't yell at your kid. And I wanted to actually go to one of these influencers and ask, is it okay if I yell at my kid when it's something actually physically dangerous? But all of a sudden it clicked to me that this is one of the reasons yelling exists. Hey, watch out. Danger, don't you run into that wall, let that freaking mirror go, because I'm across the room and I can't grab them or anything. So I'm actually questioning my survival instincts based on some theory, right? Based on this like theory of like gentle parenting or whatever, I'm questioning something that is so innate and so natural and is totally like more important, right? Than this like upper brain. And I'm doing it with my upper brain. So it's really, really important that you look at your situation, right? I can't tell you what's going on. I can't tell you if you're justified. I know that with my husband, like I had to take a hammer to him. Like, and this was the only way that he could get into like being any kind of like a real feeling person. And it saved his life. So, I can't say whether, or not like fighting in general has like a good outcome or bad outcome or whatever. But all I'm saying is don't gaslight yourself because of theory. Okay, so one of the most abusive like communication theories that I've ever come across is called nonviolent communication. You employ nonviolent communication, the theory of nonviolent communication with an abuser, and it is like just the most inappropriate way that you could address an episode of abuse. So like just don't use theories, right? Think about how you feel, think about what you're doing, think about what you're okay with and the person that you want to be. Are you out of control or are you absolutely at your wit's end? Are you being triggered into like crazyville, or are you just so fed up that you are ready to just like explode? The most beautiful ideas can be used to gaslight. Talking about unconditional love, gratitude, forgiveness, doing it for the kids or God, whatever, devotion. My favorite is like understanding. Well, you understand their perspective. Like, bish, please. Every garbage person is coming from a garbage place. Do you remember when I said that if everyone has a reason, no one does? Yeah. So, yeah. The upstairs mind, the upstairs thinking, the evolved way of being, the person that can show unconditional love and gratitude and forgiveness and doing it for the kids and understanding other people's perspectives. Like, they're safe. They're seen. They're heard. They're acknowledged. They're respected. And so therefore, yeah, I mean, they can create whatever kind of life they want to create. And of course, I want to live in an evolved upper brain. Of course, I want to be a human being and not a shark. But you can only create that if you yourself and your partner, whomever it is that you're fighting with, can answer these questions honestly. Are you thinking about this? Are you thinking about the ways that you're being when you're fighting and the things that are going on when you're fighting? Are you reflecting on this? Are you able to look at the bigger picture? Like, how did we get here? Why are we so mad? Can you consider the other person's perspective? Can you understand in what way you are contributing? It's most likely just patterns, it's programming just playing out probably from your childhood and your own family. But are they ones that you're aware of? Are these programs that you're aware of? You're not actually blaming anyone for your stuff. And I'm not saying, again, we're not talking about, blaming someone for them not giving you your human rights, right? Not seeing, acknowledging, not empathizing with you. Like we're talking about like your stuff. We're asking, like, can you take responsibility for the stuff that genuinely is yours? When I came to the conclusion that my husband was completely the one in the wrong, it came after years and years and years and years and years and years and years of fighting and me asking myself, like, how am I going wrong here? Like, what part am I contributing to this? And trying to see eye to eye to him and coming to agreements and trying to make considerations and trying to, meet in the middle and compromise, etc. After years and years of trying this with him, I realized that like there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. I've tried absolutely everything. There's nothing I can do. This really is like all on you. And it's because I could answer all those questions with a yes. Like, yes. And I'm okay with me. I looked at the ways that I was behaving, and even though the ways that I was behaving in our fights was no way that I would ever want to live, I was okay with what I was doing in the situation. Like, it was a survival instinct, and I was gonna survive. And this is why this behavior was happening. Like, I was responding appropriately to the situation at hand. I didn't want to be in that situation anymore. Like, but he needed to change the situation because the situation was being created by him. So if, considering the circumstances, you don't feel like your reaction fit the situation, ideally, we would be able to chat together and come to conclusions that, both parties can uphold. But like, when somebody isn't able to empathize, then like, good freaking luck. Vulnerability is hard for everyone, but it's necessary for connection. And for some people that have childhood trauma, especially, it is very, very, very difficult to the point where it actually feels unbearable in a lot of instances. And that takes a really, really like intent focus to get over. Empathy is tough to come by in relationships, especially, hetero relationships, because of patriarchy. And we're all mostly walking around with micro trauma. Half of all people, around half, I think it's like 49%, have an insecure attachment, which basically means that our basic needs for being responded to weren't met. So like, half of people are walking around just half able to, like, not even able to really securely connect. So this is happening, right? People are not relating in the ways that they would want to relate, and it is common, common. So the only way that we get past that is if we take responsibility for our behavior and take that radical responsibility, again, that I talked about in the Zero to Hero season. And I talk about in the Zero to Hero course, taking that radical self-responsibility for what's going on, and whether that means that you leave the relationship or that you draw a line, like I've been drawing lines with my husband since my son was born, lines. And it's like actually really coming to a really good outcome, which is amazing. So whatever that means to you, you really have to take that radical responsibility to like make changes in your life, because it isn't enjoyable to have, fights with the lower brain, because it isn't enjoyable to live like that. Like you don't want to be living in the downstairs brain, you want to be living upstairs and having beautiful, fulfilling relationships, right? This is a matter of evolution. Like, I mean, literally, we're talking about like the evolved brain versus, the lizard brain. Whether it's you, them, or the relationship, it doesn't really matter. Like we need to evolve. We need to get beyond this. We need to go upstairs, right? And if we are upstairs, then, it's pretty much almost always going to be, two people's input that is creating the conflict. When both people are capable of empathy, when both people are capable of taking responsibility, when both people are capable of vulnerability, then you can throw every relationship book out, because you can do anything. All you need to do is sit down and have a chat about it, and then have a chat about it again, and move on and grow and grow and grow together, communicating the whole way. And I really, really want that for you. So I hope this helps, helps you take responsibility, helps you feel maybe better for some of your fights, or maybe makes you feel like you should take some more responsibility in some of your conflicts. I don't know. I hope that it's just affected you in some kind of productive way. And I can't wait to talk to you next time about how to be irresistible to anybody. Talk about what everybody wants from you. I'll see you next week, y'all. Take care. G'day, y'all.